Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Today we'll be exploring a fundamental aspect of economics and business management with our presentation titled Output and Costs. We'll take a closer look at how a firm's production decisions are closely linked to its cost structure and how this relationship evolves across different time frames. I'm excited to dive into these concepts with you and uncover the important insights they offer for making effective business decisions. Let's get started. In this module, we'll start by understanding the difference between the short run and the long run in production and costs. This distinction is crucial because it affects how firms make decisions about resources and production levels. Then, we'll dive into short-run product curves, which show the relationship between input and output in the short term. From there, we'll explore short-run cost curves, learning how they are constructed and why they matter for businesses managing their expenses. Finally, we'll look at the long-run average cost curve, focusing on its logic and what it means for a firm's efficiency and economics of scale over time. This roadmap will guide us through the key concepts needed to grasp how production and costs behave in different time frames. Here we're looking at the difference between the short run and the long run in production terms. In the short run, at least one input is fixed, which means the firm has limited flexibility when it comes to making production decisions or adjusting costs. This restriction can affect how quickly the firm responds to changes in demand or efficiency. On the other hand, in the long run, all inputs are variable. This allows the firm to completely adjust the size of the plant and all resources over time. Because of this flexibility, the firm can find the optimal scale of production, improving efficiency, and potentially lowering costs. Understanding this distinction is crucial for making strategic decisions about resource allocation and planning. Here, we're looking at the production function illustrated through the total product of labor input in the short run. On the x-axis, we have the units of labor, while the y-axis shows the total product output. As we increase labor from zero, the total product rises steadily, indicating more output produced with more workers. Notice how the total product increases rapidly at first, reflecting efficient utilization of additional labor. However, after about 6 units of labor, the gains begin to slow down, showing diminishing returns. Beyond 7 units, the output plateaus, which means adding more workers doesn't increase total production. This curve highlights a key concept in production economics. Initially, more labor boosts output significantly, but after a certain point, returns diminish and eventually level off. Here, we're looking at 2 important concepts in labor productivity: average product and marginal product. Starting with average product, this measures the output produced per unit of labor. Think of it as the overall efficiency of each worker on average. Typically, the average product will rise initially as workers become more productive, but after a certain point, it starts to fall as adding more workers yields less additional output per person. On the other hand, marginal product represents the extra output generated by adding one more worker. This usually peaks earlier than the average product and then declines more sharply. This shows how each additional unit of labor contributes less and less to total output after a certain stage, illustrating diminishing returns. Understanding these 2 measures helps us analyze labor productivity and make informed decisions about staffing and production levels. Here we see the concept of diminishing marginal returns illustrated through the relationship between total product and marginal product as we vary the quantity of the input. The total product curve shows how output increases as more variable input is added, but notice how the rate of increase slows down over time. This is captured clearly by the marginal product line, which measures the additional output from each extra unit of input. Initially, marginal product rises, reaching a peak, but after a certain point it begins to decline. This decline in marginal product indicates diminishing returns. Each additional unit adds less to output than the previous one. Eventually, marginal product even becomes 0 and then negative, meaning that adding more input actually reduces total output. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it highlights the limits of production efficiency when increasing a single input while others remain fixed. Here, we're looking at the basics of short-run costs in production. First up, fixed costs. These are the expenses that stay the same no matter how much you produce, like rent or salaries. Next, variable costs. These change depending on your production levels. For example, materials or direct labor costs go up as you make more products. Finally, total cost is simply the sum of both fixed and variable costs at each level of output. Understanding these concepts is crucial for managing expenses and making informed production decisions. The accompanying image highlights key financial tools that help track and analyze these costs. Here we see the relationship between different cost measures and the quantity of output produced in the short run, illustrated by the average cost curves. The x-axis represents the quantity of output, while the y-axis shows the cost per unit. Notice how the average fixed cost, or AFC, starts high when output is low, and steadily declines as output increases, reflecting the spreading of fixed costs over more units. The average variable cost, AVC, initially decreases slightly, then begins to rise as output expands, capturing variable costs that change with production volume. The average total cost, ATC, combines these two and forms a U-shaped curve, falling at first due to declining AFC, but eventually rising because of increasing AVC. Finally, the marginal cost, MC, is key for decision-making, initially decreasing and then climbing sharply after a certain point, showing the cost of producing one more unit and its impact on overall costs. Understanding these curves helps us grasp how costs behave with changing production levels and is essential for optimizing output and pricing strategies. Here we have a worked example illustrating short-run costs using a table. The first column shows the output in units, from 0 to 6. The total cost column reflects the overall expense for producing each output level. Notice at 0 output, there's still a fixed cost of $50, even without producing anything. Moving to average cost per unit, we can see it starts high at $70 for the first unit and generally decreases as output increases, hitting a low point at 3 and 4 units before rising again. This demonstrates economies of scale initially. Finally, looking at marginal cost, the cost of producing one more unit, we see it stays constant at $20 between outputs 1 and 2, but begins to rise steadily after that, reaching $60 by the 6th unit. This rising marginal cost reflects diminishing returns in the short run. Overall, this table helps us understand how costs behave as production levels change over short periods, which means productivity drops. As a result, the cost of producing each new unit goes up, causing marginal cost to rise. Understanding this relationship helps us see why product curves and cost curves move the way they do in response to changes in efficiency. Here we focus on the concept of long-run cost and how it relates to the firm's plant choice. Unlike the short run, in the long run, the firm has the flexibility to adjust all inputs, including the size of its plant. This means the company isn't limited by fixed factors and can change everything to find the most efficient way to produce. By having this flexibility, the firm can select the production method that minimizes costs for any given output level. This ability to adjust inputs helps the business stay competitive and adapt to changing conditions, ensuring it operates as efficiently as possible over time. Here we see the relationship between output level and average cost represented by both short-run and long-run curves. The short-run average cost curves correspond to 3 different plant sizes, each showing how costs change when output varies but plant size remains fixed. Notice how each short-run curve has a distinct shape and minimum point, reflecting the efficiency at that plant scale. The long-run average cost curve, or LRAC, envelopes these short-run curves. It shows the lowest possible cost of production when the firm can adjust plant size optimally for every level of output. As output increases, the LRAC initially declines due to economies of scale, reaching a minimum around output level 5 or 6, then gradually rises, illustrating diseconomies of scale at higher output levels. This curve is crucial because it guides firms in choosing the most cost-efficient plant size for their production goals. By comparing short-run costs at fixed plant sizes to the long-run cost, we can understand how flexibility in adjusting scale impacts overall efficiency. Here, we're looking at three important concepts related to how average costs change with the scale of production. First, we have economies of scale. This happens when the average cost decreases as output increases. Essentially, the firm becomes more efficient as it produces more, benefiting from factors like bulk purchasing or improved technology. Next is constant returns to scale. In this scenario, average costs stay the same even as production changes. This means the firm is operating at a balanced level of efficiency, neither gaining nor losing cost advantages as it grows. Lastly, we have diseconomies of scale. This occurs when the firm becomes too large or too complicated to manage effectively, causing average costs to rise. This can happen due to problems like coordination difficulties or increased bureaucracy. The image of various coins here symbolizes cost and value, reinforcing the idea that managing costs effectively is crucial as firms grow. To wrap up, we started by distinguishing between the short-run and long-run periods in production, which is crucial for understanding how firms adjust their inputs over different time horizons. Next, we explored key production measures: total product, marginal product, and average product, which help us evaluate output levels efficiently. Then, we looked at the main cost curves in the short run to grasp how costs vary with production changes. Finally,